While recovering after a near-fatal accident, I overheard my boyfriend telling a nurse he hoped I wouldn't wake up, because he was already planning a future with my sister. My parents begged me not to make drama, but when I revealed everything, the truth shattered the entire family. I just hope she doesn't wake up. That was the first thing I heard. I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't hallucinating. I was awake, barely but awake. The voice was familiar. My boyfriend. He was standing just outside my hospital room talking to a nurse. I didn't move. I couldn't. My body felt like it had been stitched to the bed. My limbs were heavy, my throat dry, and my head throbbed. But my mind was sharp, alert, and suddenly drowning in disbelief. She's sweet, he continued, but I've already moved on. Her sister and I, we're planning something real. The nurse didn't respond right away. I could hear her shifting, maybe uncomfortable. Then she said, she's stable. She could wake up any time. He sighed. I know. That's the problem. I lay there, still and silent, pretending to be unconscious. My heart was racing, but I kept my breathing slow. I didn't want him to know I'd heard. Not yet. The door creaked open. I felt the shift in air, the soft shuffle of his shoes. He sat beside me, took my hand gently and whispered, "You're going to be okay." I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip the four out of my arm and tell him to get out. But I didn't. I let the moment burn into my memory. The hours that followed were a blur. Nurses came and went. Machines beeped. My parents arrived, their faces pale and worried. My mother cried softly, brushing my hair back. My father held my hand and whispered prayers. Then came my sister. She walked in with a bouquet of white lilies. My favorite. Her smile was wide, her voice soft. "You scared us," she said, leaning in to kiss my forehead. I watched her closely. She looked perfect, hair curled, makeup flawless, wearing the necklace I'd given her last Christmas. But something about her felt rehearsed. She stayed longer than the others, chatting with the nurses, fussing over my blanket, asking if I needed anything. And when she spoke to my boyfriend, her tone shifted, more playful, more familiar. I noticed the way he looked at her. The way she touched his arm. The way they laughed at something I couldn't hear. It wasn't just my imagination. That night I asked the nurse quietly, "Did you hear him earlier?" "Outside my room." She hesitated. "I'm not supposed to talk about that." "Please," I whispered. "I need to know I'm not crazy." She looked around, then nodded. "I heard him. I'm sorry." I closed my eyes. It was real. The next morning I pretended to sleep when my boyfriend arrived. He sat beside me, scrolling through his phone, occasionally glancing at me. My sister came in an hour later and they talked quietly near the window. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught fragments. "She's getting stronger. We need to be careful. Not now." I watched them through half-closed eyes. Their body language said everything. Over the next few days I began collecting clues. I asked my parents about the accident. They said I'd been hit by a drunk driver. My car was totaled. I'd been unconscious for nearly a week. I asked about my boyfriend, how often he'd visited, how he'd reacted. My mother said he'd been devoted. My father said he'd barely left the hospital. I asked about my sister. "She's been amazing," my mother said. "Helping with everything. She and your boyfriend have been taking turns staying here." I nodded, pretending to be grateful. Inside I was unraveling. One afternoon my sister brought me a smoothie. "You need to keep your strength up," she said, placing it on the tray. I smiled weakly. "Thanks." She sat beside me, scrolling through her phone. I glanced at the screen. A message popped up from him. "She's awake. Be careful." She quickly locked the screen. I looked away. That evening I asked my boyfriend, "Can you help me sit up?" He nodded, adjusting the pillows. "You're doing better," he said. "I remember things," I said quietly. "Bits and pieces." He froze. "Like what?" "Voices. Conversations. You talking to someone." He looked at me, eyes narrowing. "You were unconscious." "Was I?" He didn't answer. The next day my sister brought a book. "Thought you might want something to read," she said. I opened it. Inside was a note. "We didn't mean for it to happen. Please don't hate me." I stared at the words. He knew I knew. I didn't confront them. Not yet. I needed to be stronger. I needed to be ready. So I waited. I watched. I planned. And every moment I spent pretending to be unaware, I was building the strength to face the truth. The silence in my hospital room was unbearable after I discovered the note my sister had slipped inside the book. My hands trembled as I folded the paper, hiding it beneath the blanket. I knew then that I couldn't carry this alone. I needed someone to confirm what I had heard, what I had seen, what I now knew. That afternoon, when the hallway was quiet and the shift had changed, I asked the nurse who had been kind to me since the day I woke up. She was older, with gentle eyes and a calm presence that made me feel safe. "Can I ask you something?" I whispered, my voice low so no one else would hear. She leaned closer. "Of course. You heard him, didn't you? That night. Outside my room." Her expression shifted. She hesitated, glancing toward the door as if afraid someone might walk in. "I shouldn't." "Please," I interrupted, my voice breaking. "I need to know I'm not imagining it." Her shoulders sagged. She nodded slowly. "I heard him. He said he hoped you wouldn't wake up. And he mentioned your sister." The words hit me harder than the accident itself. My worst fears weren't just suspicions, they were real. I closed my eyes, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Thank you," I whispered. She squeezed my hand gently. "You're stronger than you think." That night I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed every moment. The bouquet of lilies, the whispered conversations, the note in the book. I knew I had to tell my parents. They deserved to know. Or at least I thought they did. The next morning I asked them to come alone. My father sat stiffly in the chair. My mother perched on the edge of the bed, her hands folded tightly. I took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something. About him. And about her." Their eyes widened. I explained everything. The words I overheard, the nurse's confirmation, the note from my sister. My mother gasped, covering her mouth. My father's jaw tightened. But instead of outrage, instead of comfort, their reaction was panic. "You can't say this out loud," my mother whispered urgently. "Do you know what this would do to our family?" I stared at her. "What about what it's done to me?" My father leaned forward, his voice stern. "We'll handle it quietly. No drama. No scandal. People talk. We can't let this get out." I felt my chest tighten. "You're asking me to stay silent? After everything?" My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Please. For the family's sake." I turned away, my heart breaking all over again. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about reputation. Later that day I asked my boyfriend to meet me privately. He walked in looking nervous but trying to mask it with a smile. "You wanted to talk?" I nodded, my voice steady. "I know. About you. About her." His face froze. Then instead of denying it, he sighed. "I didn't plan for this to happen. But after your accident, things changed. Your sister was there. We connected." I stared at him, disbelief coursing through me. "Connected? While I was lying here fighting to wake up." He shrugged as if it were reasonable. "Life doesn't stop. You were gone. I needed someone." My hands clenched into fists. "I wasn't gone. I was fighting. And you were planning a future with her." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You don't understand. It's complicated." I pulled back. "No. It's simple. You betrayed me." The confrontation with my sister came next. I asked her to visit alone. She walked in carrying another bouquet, her smile nervous. I didn't waste time. "I know," I said flatly. Her face crumbled. Tears spilled instantly. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she sobbed. "I was lonely. You weren't there. He needed someone." I cut her off. "Don't blame me for your choices." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "You're my sister. You were supposed to protect me, not take what was mine." Her tears felt rehearsed, manipulative. She kept repeating, "I'm sorry," but her eyes betrayed something else, fear. I realized then that neither of them felt guilt. They felt fear of exposure. I couldn't carry their secret any longer. That weekend, my parents insisted on a family dinner at home. They wanted normalcy, a chance to move forward. I agreed, but I had my own plan. We sat around the table. My parents, my sister, my boyfriend, and me. The air was thick with tension. My mother smiled too brightly, my father kept clearing his throat, my sister avoided my eyes, and my boyfriend tried to act casual. Halfway through the meal I set down my fork. "I have something to say." All eyes turned to me. "I know about the two of you," I said, looking directly at my sister and my boyfriend. I know about the affair. I know about the plans you made while I was unconscious. And I'm done pretending. The room erupted. My mother gasped, dropping her glass. My father slammed his hand on the table. Enough, he barked. This is not the place. My sister burst into tears, covering her face. My boyfriend muttered, "She's exaggerating," but his voice shook. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. No. This is exactly the place. This is our family. And the truth belongs here. The fallout was immediate, explosive, and irreversible. My parents shouted, begging me to stop. My sister cried louder, insisting it wasn't what I thought. My boyfriend tried to defend himself, but his words fell flat. I walked out, leaving them in chaos. For the first time I felt free. The night I walked out of that family dinner, leaving them in chaos, I knew nothing would ever be the same. The shouting, the tears, the desperate attempts to silence me, it all echoed in my ears as I stepped into the cool night air. For the first time I wasn't carrying their shame. I was carrying my truth. But truth has consequences. Within days the family fractured. Some relatives called to scold me, insisting I had humiliated everyone by airing dirty laundry. Others quietly admitted they had suspected something between my sister and my boyfriend all along, and they were relieved I had spoken out. The divide was sharp and every gathering became unbearable. Conversations turned into whispered accusations, dinners into battlegrounds. I stopped attending altogether. I realized quickly that if I stayed in that house, surrounded by their denial and anger, I would suffocate. So I moved out. My friend offered me her spare room and I accepted. Carrying a single suitcase, I left behind the home I had grown up in, the place that had once felt safe but now felt poisoned. Starting fresh wasn't easy. My body was still healing from the accident and my heart was raw from betrayal. But I began small. Therapy sessions twice a week. Journaling every morning, even if all I could write was a single sentence. Walks in the park where the rhythm of my steps reminded me I was still alive, still moving forward. In therapy, I learned to untangle the guilt my parents had tried to wrap around me. "You didn't cause this," my therapist said gently. "You revealed it. There's a difference." Those words became a lifeline. At night, I wrote in my journal about the little victories, standing without pain, sleeping through the night, laughing at a silly movie. Healing wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and deeply personal. Months passed before my sister reached out. She sent a message, "Can we talk?" "I'm sorry." I agreed to meet her at a cafe, more out of curiosity than hope. She arrived looking nervous, her hair pulled back, her eyes red. "I regret everything," she said quickly. "I miss you. I want us to be sisters again." Her words sounded rehearsed, like lines from a play. I listened, but my heart stayed guarded. "I hear your apology," I said calmly. "But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I can forgive you in my own way, but I can't let you back into my life the same way." Her face crumpled. "So that's it? You're shutting me out?" I shook my head. "I'm protecting myself." "That's different." She cried, but I didn't waver. For the first time I set boundaries and kept them. Life slowly began to open up again. At the bookstore where I worked part-time, I met people who reminded me of my worth. Customers who thanked me for recommendations, coworkers who invited me to join them for coffee, strangers who smiled and asked how I was doing. These small interactions built me back up brick by brick. One evening, a coworker invited me to a community event. I hesitated, but I went. The room was filled with laughter, music, and warmth. I met women who had faced their own betrayals, men who had rebuilt after loss, families who had chosen honesty over appearances. Their stories mirrored mine in different ways, and I realized I wasn't alone. I began to rebuild a life that was mine alone. No manipulation. No secrets. Just truth. There were moments of loneliness, of course. Nights when I missed the idea of family, even if the reality had been broken. But I learned to sit with those feelings, to let them pass without letting them consume me. My ex tried to reach out once more months later. A letter slipped under my door. I didn't open it. I burned it in the sink, watching the paper curl and turn to ash. That was closure enough. In the end, peace didn't come from revenge. It didn't come from watching them suffer or waiting for karma to strike. It came from choosing myself. From walking away with dignity. From building a life rooted in honesty even if it was painful. The truth had shattered everything they tried to protect. But it had also given me something stronger. A foundation built not on illusion but on resilience. And as I sat on my porch one evening, journal in hand, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I realized I had found something I thought I'd lost forever. Myself.